Welcome to our daily Devo for Monday, the 21st of August. Today, we were, if you can remember all the way back to Saturday, we were in the wilderness temptation, but we're taking it in pieces. It would appear by each different temptation. Today's is the temple temptation from Matthew 4, 5 through 7, and Luke 4, 9 through 13. The quoted verse for today is Matthew 4, 7. Do not put the Lord your God to the test. The point of our lesson today, according to the author, this is his intended target for us today. The Father's words have integrity and do not require validation using a manufactured test. A lot of people like to do that, put God to the test. He doesn't need it. He's completely trustworthy. So the temple temptation, prove it. That's in quotes as we get started this morning. Prove it. At his baptism, the Father declared that Jesus was the Son of God. In this temptation, the devil essentially said to Jesus, prove it. The place of the temptation is significant. The devil takes Jesus to the temple in Jerusalem, the holiest site in the Holy Land. It is no longer consisted of a single building set on a hill, but was a sprawling campus with courtyards, covered walkways, and auxiliary buildings. We walk with Jesus up one staircase after the next until we arrive at one of the highest places in the compound, the southwest corner of the campus. Jesus likely stood on a small platform known as the place of trumpeting, the place from which public announcements echoed throughout Jerusalem, given via blasts on a ram's horn. On this spot, Jesus stood a dizzying 15 stories above the busy shopping street immediately below him. The devil took Jesus to this spot to tempt him. It was the perfect public place to demonstrate the validity of the words spoken at Jesus' baptism. All he had to do was take one more step. Gravity would send him plummeting toward the valley floor. An ordinary man would be killed by the fall, but if he were really God's son, the angels would catch him in their hands and gently lower him unharmed to the pavement below. And he cites Psalm 91, verses 11 and 12 there. The temptation assumed that the Father's words were deficient in and of themselves and needed to be tested in order to validate them. Jesus responded to the temptation with Old Testament language associated with ancient Israel's struggle to trust the words and promises of God. When facing a water shortage, they demanded that the Lord do something to prove the validity of his presence and promises. That's in Exodus 17. This was a sin, and Moses cautioned later generations against it, repeating, "Do not put the Lord your God to the test as you did at Massah." That's in Deuteronomy 6:16. This lesson remains. The words of the Father do not require validation, only trust. The words of the Father do not require validation, only trust. That's, I believe, what we call faith. we don't need God to prove anything. He's already proved everything there is to know about him. His love, his grace, his mercy, his justice, his righteousness, his holiness, all of that is a proven commodity. Think of all the things we trust without really asking. I flip a switch, I expect a light to come on. I don't think about it. I don't say, I wonder if it'll work this time. Let me Try it out. Let me stick my finger in the socket, see if there's electricity there. There's so many, I think about this all the time. Well, that's my preacher brain. Driving down the highway, I fully trust the people around me are going to drive so as not to get me killed. Now, sometimes I have to doubt that for sure, but think about when we go out anywhere, do anything, we're placing trust that we're going to go out, we're going to do it, nothing's going to happen, we'll be good. It's not always the reality, but that's our trust. But it is always the reality with our God that we can trust him. We don't need to ask him to put it to the test. We don't need to, certainly don't want to say prove it. This is the same kind of temptation, as I read this, that the devil used against Adam and Eve in the garden. He wants to get us to doubt God. He wants to get us to that line of thinking. It says, I wonder if God can help. I wonder if he will help. And so we ask, God, if this is your will, show me. I know it's been done. I know we talk about signs and Gideon and his fleece test and all of those kinds of things. I don't think that's the way it's supposed to be all the time. That every decision we make, oh God, if this is your will, please, knowing his will and trusting him, a couple of different things really, I guess. But the devil tempts in the same way he tempted Adam and Eve. He tempts in the same way he tempted Jesus, questioning, doubting. Prove it. Prove it. Just as we did when we were kids, right? Somebody said, I can do this. Well, prove it. Let me see you do it. That is not the way to operate with God. We put our faith in him. We trust him because we know he cares for us. And that's how we have to operate. Not doubting, not second guessing God, just trusting him that he is there and we are in his hands. Have a blessed day today. As you start this week, know that every day and every moment, God's promises are still 100% valid, and he's still your heavenly Father who cared about you, loved you enough to send his son to die for you, and that nothing can change that. Romans 8, toward the end of Romans 8. What can separate us from the love of God? Absolutely nothing. Blessings to you today.